Welcome to another episode of Julian's Random Projects. I realized as I prepared this thing for sale, I hadn't actually updated anybody on this project. It's a project, so it qualifies as one of my random projects. I bought a classic Mini Cooper about, I don't know, a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It was in a bad way. I will splice in some photos here. I picked it up from a guy who imported it from the UK and let it sit in his driveway for 10 years because it didn't run. Like it ran when he first bought it, I guess, and then it had some kind of mechanical failure with the engine and he just gave up on it. I always had aspirations of fixing it up but never completed it. Try to give you some scale here. Let me put a laptop. This is one of those, it's 11-inch. I'll put it up here where the paint's not as new. That's an 11-inch MacBook Air. To give you guys an idea of the scale of this thing. It's pretty small. But it's not small inside. It's actually pretty spacious inside, like modern Mini Coopers are also. Oh, that doesn't show up very well at all. It's all it's all black carpet, black interior. Maybe this would have been done better during the day. But anyways, so let's turn the lights. There we go. So after I picked it up, first thing first was get the engine running. That was a number of things. It had fuel injection. It actually has a pretty modern motor in it. It's got fuel injection. The injectors were clogged with gummed up fuel. The fuel lines were clogged with gummed up fuel. Let's see what else. The tank was completely rusted out. The fuel pump had turned into, the best way to describe it is like paper mache. Like it was just all rust. I think I have a photo of that, which I will slice in here. It's very gross looking. And then this is what a new pump looks like, as an example. So swapped all those parts out, and yeah, so after that it started right up. After having fresh gas put in it and cleaning out the gas tank, it did really well. And I was actually very pleased with the stuff I got to get rid of the gas, or get rid of the rust in the gas tank, or petrol tank if you're British. One of my options was to buy like a $600 gas tank, and I elected not to do that because I saw this fluid that was supposed to get, like, you dunk your tools into it and it gets rid of all the rust. Well, I thought, and guys were using it to de-rust motorcycle tanks, and so you needed about a gallon of this, and you throw it in your motorcycle tank and then turn it on, or let it sit in there for a day and then flip it over, let it sit in there for another day. And I thought, well, if I just bought enough of this, I could do my gas tank from a car. And so I did that, and I bought about $100 worth of this stuff, and I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. And I don't think that I saturated the gunk, so I actually dumped it back into the bucket that it came in, and I plan on using it later in the future. So I guess it's just a sort of a recap of where I am with it now, because I'm about to sell it. I thought I'd keep it forever, and then as I started working on it, I learned a lot of interesting things about this car. It's not a classic car. Of course, the guy that sold it to me didn't he gave me a hint that it wasn't. It's registered as a 1971 car in California, which is nice because it's exempt from smog inspections and all sorts of other fun stuff. As best I can tell, it was actually manufactured in the mid-90s, and then through maybe some paperwork shenanigans imported into the States, because you can't import new cars easily from the United States without going through a bunch of modifications and rigmarole. And actually, I'm not speaking from a conference. I've never imported a car, so it's just what I heard from other people. If you want to get one on the road, it needs lots of modifications. You can always import a car and then park it in your driveway and take it to car shows by towing it there on a trailer. That's always an option. So you can import just about anything. But to get it on the road, it's challenging. And I guess there's loopholes for cars that were made before like the 1980s. And so I think that somebody took advantage of that loophole with this car. Nonetheless, it's here in the States. I've got paperwork to quote unquote prove uh, its heritage and where it came from. So, it doesn't bother me that it's from the 90s, but it's not a classic car. I'm not going to be entering it into classic car events because I think that, one, anybody that's actually rating those would know in the same way that I discovered that it was not made in. All right, so it looks like I ran out of disk space while I was recording that last one. I think the last thing I was talking about was the fact that this wasn't a classic car and I wasn't going to be putting it into car shows. So let's pick it up from there. Long story short, yeah, I'm not in love with it like I thought it was. So this is now going to be another one of my flips, if you will. I don't necessarily like that term because I'm not trying to suggest that I do this often, but it's a hobby. I've been paying cash for cars since I was in high school. I don't believe in debt, so I don't believe in car loans. I believe in paying cash for everything, including cars. And so you'll find that if you do that, the money you would have paid the bank in interest over time would allow you to buy a number of cars, or 2 or 3 cars instead of just the one. So you end up having more types of cars and more fun with them. The only caveats are that you can't normally buy new. You're going to be buying cars that are 2 years older or older. And so that's what I do. And so I buy a car because I think it's cool. I drive it for 6 months, and then I sell it for more than I paid for it. And in doing that, I end up driving cars for free. It's just been my habit. So imagine getting two or more cars a year as your daily driver, or just as something to have to putz around on the weekend with, and you can imagine going through quite a few cars. So I've learned a few things along the way. As an example, upgrading the lights in this car. These were all incandescent. I upgraded them to LEDs, and that really gives it a modern look. Installing a decent stereo. What's this going to come on? How the keys aren't on. Installing a decent stereo. More LED lights on the floorboards. For lots of cars in the mid and the 90s and 80s, you can really make them look pretty nice and new. And as an example, there's the dome light for this thing, super bright. It's necessary because that's the only light. It's off to one side. I'm going to put more on the floor. Let's see. In general, clean them up. Learn how to wax a car. A lot of cars are just faded and don't look so hot because they just aren't being taken care of. Put a bit of spit and polish on it. I'll splice in it. This has been painted recently, so I just got it out of the paint shop. It's a little tacky, if you will. It's got a couple more weeks to sit here. I've got to put the stripes back on the front. It originally had nice white racing stripes. It looked really slick. I've done a suspension upgrade. It's got all new coils, where originally I used to have these big thick rubber dampers that are unique to minis, but they, like you'd expect from rubber, give a really bouncy ride. There wasn't a lot of recoil. So replaced all the all 4 of the wheels, or all 4 of the suspension linkage and bushings. Like if you've got to pull it apart to replace some shocks and install some springs, you might as well replace all the rubber that's in there. It's really cheap. They're like 10-15 bucks for some of these parts. I put high intensity discharge lights in special lenses so that it actually projects and puts it on the wall. Because when you're doing these HID lights, if you just put them in regular ones, you'll dazzle everybody and be throwing light all sorts of ways and people be flashing and stuff. So you've got to do it right. And there's also some LED running lights in there. And if you look down, it's got the stock fog lights, and I'm about to replace them with just new shiny ones. These were also cheap. One other great thing about this car was that there's like a crazy supportive enthusiast group. And there's here in California, there's also a guy that maintains a warehouse just full of parts for this thing. So these were affordable. The ones that are in here have actually got a little bit of rust down in the bottom. You see that? There's like a tiny drain hole on the bottom. I guess these weren't sealed to the elements, so they wanted to have a place where it can drain. Bit of an engineering failure because that ended up being the point of ingress for water and salt and grime, so now it's actually rusting from the inside out. These I'll pull off. They're actually still together. They just look unsightly and I'm trying to sell it, so I wanted to really shine. So I might hold on to these and put them on another project, or the next project, now that I'm committed to selling this thing, is to buy like an old Austin Healey, like a bug-eyed Sprite or something. I just think they're really cool looking, and I'm literally just buying it because I want to paint it a specific color. I bought some beer recently, and it was called not Angry Ape. Oh, Bitter American. It's called Bitter American. You guys can Google it. And it's like, the idea is that like one of the first astronauts was a monkey, and he's all pissed off about it because he doesn't get the credit. But the blue that was in there, like the blue on the can, looks amazing. So I'll see if I can find something that'll color match it. And then I'm just buying a Roadster for the sole purpose of painting it that color. That's it. I'm just goofy that way. Let's see. So I'm really pleased with the paint. This is like a sub $1,000 paint job. It's not concourse. It's not gonna, win at awards and shows. And when you get it really close to it, you start to find some of the flaws. I still have to put the rubber gaskets that go between these fender wings in here. They were removed. These were removed for the painting and then put back on, so the rubber was all tarnished or perished, as the Brits would say. So I bought that. It was like 15 cents an inch, so cheap. Might as well do it. Let's see what else. More upgrades on the back. More LED lights. This isn't lit, so that doesn't look. It's not all that impressive, but it's got a little boot. Here's the tank on this side. It's like a 9-gallon tank or something. It's really small, but this car gets like 40 plus miles to the gallon when you behave yourself. Maybe more if I learned how to quote unquote hypermile it. It'd probably be all right. Upgraded the speakers. It had like sun destroyed. That was the other big problem with this car, was that he left it out in the sun and it just ate away the paint. Just that, all the damage was mostly from the sun. And I would have left it that way. It looked really, really cool. It had like this like patina, if you will. It's like, it was naturally faded, like it hadn't gotten an accident or anything. Well, I say, like that wasn't the damage. The damage wasn't from an accident, but it actually had gotten in an accident. This door and this fender had been nicked in a parking lot, and he took it to a paint shop and they repaired it and painted it. And so these were perfectly painted and very shiny, and then the rest of the car was that cool faded look. And so because they didn't match, I couldn't leave it faded. I would have just compound, like, rubbed it, brought it all back down to like got rid of some of the oxidation, and then put a clear coat on it. I would have like paid to clear coat it that way. It looked really, really cool. But what are you gonna do? So it needed to be uniform, otherwise it just wasn't doing it justice rolling down the road. The roof didn't need it. It's all relatively new paint, but back in the 70s. But of course, like I talked about before, this is probably not built in the 70s. Probably built in the 90s. But also the same thing for these types of cars in the 90s. They weren't given clear coats. They were just given a base coat of paint, and so you can really do some damage over time without a clear coat. I think it's something that people sort of take for granted now, is that cars have clear coats on them. So anyways, like I said, today's project is to put these lights on that grip on there. So we'll pull the bumper off, remove those lights, and just reinstall the same exact way. And that's it. So I might throw another couple photos of this completed with its racing stripes and badges. All the badges had to come off for paint. And then I bought new ones because the old ones didn't look so hot. With these cards, you end up with like a big box of parts. Let me see again. No, well, I don't see my big bag of parts right now. But you always end up with like this bag. Oh, the other thing I had to do that's worth noting, I guess, with this car is that it had an immobilizer or a car alarm if you're in the States. And the guy that I bought it from hadn't driven it so long, he didn't have the remote for it. Like, he didn't know, how to disable it. And so once I finally got it running, it started like blinking at me and giving me like, it wouldn't actually start because of that. And so I had to remove the immobilizer, which actually ended up being really, really simple. I'll throw up a schematic here. And it was a matter of finding the schematic for it, which I couldn't find, but I found a guy's, somebody had created a schematic to convert a 3AS to a 5AS, so an older immobilizer for this Mini to the newer immobilizer for this Mini, and that gave me the pinout at least. And so all car alarms are, well, their main function is to detect that there's some sort of something's weird, either the door's open when it wasn't supposed to, or that someone's tried to turn the key but they don't have an RFID tag. Like there's some state that says something's not normal, and when something's not normal, one of its biggest things, other than blinking and honking, which nobody really cares about nowadays, but like I guess the 80s and 90s people would like look and go, what is that? And then maybe see the person trying to steal your car, but now nobody cares. So the biggest thing, or the most important thing they do, is they disconnect the computer from the engine, or they disconnect the ignition switches from starting the engine. And so that's all I had to find with this. I just had to find out, what is this car alarm cutting off when it thinks that there's a problem. And it was just 2 pins, it's like ignition in and ignition out, and all I had to do was short them. It was really, really simple. And then I just shorted them and then soldered the stuff together and closed, wrapped up the thing and took the car alarm out. The fact that it has a car alarm should tell you. And it looked like it was, lots of guys will take these older cars and they will put a newer motor in it. That's fine. But no one's going to go through the trouble of installing a factory wiring harness in a 1970s car, a harness from the 90s into a 70s car, and also installing the factory immobilizer. And so that's just not, it's not likely. So anyways, more evidence that this thing was built in the 90s. Anyways, so there it sits. It's another one of my random projects. It's a fun thing I do. I buy used cars, drive them around for a little while, and then move them on. It's like a hobby. There's the dog. So thanks for watching. Like I said, I might throw in a couple more photos here at the end of what it looks like now that I've added the bonnet stripes and got it ready for sale. Yeah, so wish me luck. Thanks.